Hey, my name's Jacob. I'm 35 years old, and I live in a small town in Oregon. I work at a local auto shop. Been there for over a decade now. Nothing fancy, just regular repair work. Brakes, oil changes, the occasional transmission job. It's honest work, and it's always kept the lights on. I used to think my life was exactly how it was supposed to be. Not perfect by anyone else's standards, but perfect to me. I had a wife. Her name was Lauren, and 2 kids. Ava, who's now 9, and Caleb, 7. We didn't make a lot of money, but we had enough. Enough to pay bills, take the kids for ice cream on Fridays, save a little for Christmas, and dream about the future. We used to talk about retiring by the lake someday. Fishing, reading, grandkids running around our porch. It was simple. It was beautiful. Lauren was my best friend. We met when we were both 19, working part-time at a grocery store. She always said I bag her heart like I bagged her groceries, terribly, but with effort. She was the one who kept everything in balance. The house, the bills, the kids, me. She was the glue, but everything shattered so fast. One morning, she said she felt tired. Just tired. No big deal, we thought. She worked hard, took care of everyone. But the fatigue didn't go away. Then came the headaches, the weight loss, the dark circles. She brushed it off, but I knew something wasn't right. I begged her to see a doctor. After tests and scans and a lot of waiting, we finally got the diagnosis. It was cancer. Aggressive. Rare. Already spreading. They said we caught it late. Stage 4. No guarantees. Just options, chemo, radiation, clinical trials. Anything that might buy us time. And we did everything. I swear to you, everything. I sold my truck, cashed out my savings, maxed out 2 credit cards. I even borrowed money for people I barely knew. I didn't care. I would have gone into $1,000 more of debt if it meant she could live one more day. But nothing worked. In 3 months, she was gone. Just like that. The house felt empty in a way I can't explain. I couldn't sleep in our bed for weeks. I'd lay on the couch, still listening for her footsteps, even though I knew they'd never come. The kids, they didn't understand, not fully. I tried to stay strong for them, keep their routines, pack their lunches, read them bedtime stories, but there were nights I cried into their pillows after they fell asleep. The worst part wasn't the funeral. It wasn't closing her closet or turning off her phone line. It was waking up every morning and remembering she was gone, over and over again. People stopped calling after the first couple of weeks. They always do. Everyone's busy. Everyone moves on. Except you. You don't move on. You just move forward, slowly, bitterly, with this weight on your chest that never goes away. I didn't go out much anymore. Just working home. I turned down invites. Stopped answering messages. No one noticed after a while. For a whole year, I lived like that. In a kind of fog. I was still a dad. I still made sure the kids brushed their teeth, did their homework, got to school on time. But me? I was just surviving. Not living. Not feeling. Just breathing and doing the bare minimum. Some days, I'd sit on the porch with a beer after putting the kids to bed and talk to Lauren. Just out loud. Like she was still listening. Maybe she was. I don't know. There's a photo of her on the mantle. The one where we're holding the kids at the beach. I look at it every day. She's smiling like nothing in the world could touch her. Like we had forever. But we didn't. I tried therapy. Once. Sat in a gray room across from a guy with a notepad who kept nodding. I left after 15 minutes and never went back. I wasn't ready. Maybe I still ain't. So I did what most men do. Bottled it up, buried it deep, and told myself I'd be fine. As long as the kids were okay, I didn't matter. That's what I believed. But grief doesn't care about your beliefs. It waits. It eats at you quietly. It changes how you see the world. That was the life I was living when everything started to change. And it wasn't some big, dramatic moment. It started the same way life tends to shift, quietly, unexpectedly, with someone moving into the house next door. But that's another part of the story. It was late spring when the moving truck showed up. I remember because the cherry tree out front was in full bloom, the one Lauren used to love. Ava pointed it out on our way back from school that day, and I caught myself wanting to tell Lauren how pretty it looked this year. Old habits. The truck was parked right in front of the house next door, a place that had been empty for over 8 months. Ever since the Jacksons moved to Florida. I didn't think much of it at first. New neighbor, sure, Probably a young couple or some retired folks looking for peace and quiet. But then I saw her. She was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt, nothing flashy. Hair tied up, sunglasses on. She was hauling boxes like she didn't need help, like she'd been doing this on her own for a while. Strong, not the kind of strong that makes noise, the quiet kind, the kind built out of necessity. I was on my porch, drinking coffee, when she noticed me. She gave a polite wave, not too friendly, not cold either, just neutral. I nodded back. That was it. For the next few days, I kept seeing her, carrying furniture, talking to the cable guy, taking out trash. No one came to help. No friends, no family. Just her and a black cat that liked to sit on the windowsill. Eventually, Ava started getting curious. One morning she asked, "Dad, is the lady next door nice?" "I don't know," I said. "Haven't really met her." "You should say hi. That's what Mommy used to do." That stuck with me. A couple of days later, I saw her struggling to fix the mailbox. The post was wobbly and tilted to the side. I was heading to work, but something told me to stop. I pulled over, grabbed my toolbox from the bed of the truck, and walked over. "Need a hand?" She turned, surprised. I thought it was just leaning, but I think it's beyond repair. I crouched down and looked at it. Post is split at the base. You're not fixing this without replacing it. I was afraid of that. I looked up at her. I've got a spare post in my garage. Used to build birdhouses with my daughter before things got busy. She smiled. "I'm Emily." "Jacob." That was the first time we actually spoke. I fixed her mailbox that evening. She brought me a bottle of lemonade and sat on the steps while I worked. We didn't talk much, just small things. The weather, the neighborhood. She said she used to teach high school English before moving. I asked why she left the city, and she hesitated. Needed a fresh start, she finally said. I didn't ask more. I understood. Over the next few weeks, we'd see each other in passing. She'd wave, I'd wave back. Sometimes she'd be out gardening, and Ava would run over to ask about the flowers. Emily always had time for her. Caleb was more shy, but even he warmed up when she gave him an old soccer ball she found in her garage. Said it reminded her of her nephew. One Saturday afternoon, I was mowing the lawn and noticed her garage door open. Something sparked, and a second later, smoke poured out. I dropped everything and ran over. Turns out, she had a faulty extension cord. It caught fire near some cardboard boxes. We managed to put it out before it spread. No damage, just a mess and a scare. She was shaken. I told her to come over, sit with the kids while I cleaned up. She did. They made her laugh. First time I heard it, soft and sudden, like she wasn't used to doing it anymore. That night, she knocked on my door with a small pie. Said thank you. I invited her in for a cup of coffee. The kids were asleep. We sat at the kitchen table and talked for over an hour. About nothing and everything. She asked about Lauren, gently. I didn't open up much. Not yet, but I told her enough for her to understand. She nodded a lot, like she wasn't hearing it for the first time, like she knew what it was to lose something and keep living. I came here to be alone, she said, but I didn't think it would feel this lonely. I didn't respond. I just looked at her, and she looked back like she saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself in a long time. No flirting, no tension, just understanding. A few nights later, she invited me over for dinner. Said she made too much pasta and didn't want to throw it out. The kids loved her. She told them stories about her teaching days. Ava hugged her before bed. Caleb asked if she could come over again sometime. I was still broken. I knew that. But somehow, with Emily sitting at our dinner table, laughing at my bad jokes, I didn't feel quite as shattered. And that's how it started. Nothing big, nothing dramatic. Just kindness. Quiet dinners. Shared silence. Two people who didn't want to be alone anymore, but were too afraid to say it out loud. We weren't friends yet. Not really. But something had shifted. It had been almost a year since Emily moved in next door. A year of small talks across the fence, of her checking in on the kids when I had to run late at the shop, of us sharing leftovers and stories in each other's kitchens without ever labeling what we were doing. We never talked about relationships. Not once. I think we both respected the silence that hung around certain parts of our lives. She never asked about Lauren after that first time, and I never asked about her past, though I suspected there was more to her story than she let on. Then one night in early November, after I put the kids to bed, there was a soft knock at my door. Emily was standing there with 2 mugs of something steaming. She looked tired but calm. "Hot cider," she said. "I made too much again." I let her in without saying a word. She walked to the kitchen like she belonged there, like this was just what we did. And honestly, by then we sat down at the table. No music, no TV, just the ticking of the wall clock and the distant hum of the fridge. After a few minutes, she looked at me and said, "I saw you sitting in the truck earlier. You okay?" I've been doing that a lot lately, sitting in the driveway after work with the engine off, just staring. Sometimes at the steering wheel, sometimes at nothing. I didn't realize she noticed. "I do that when I miss her," I said quietly. "It sneaks up sometimes." Emily didn't flinch. She didn't try to fix it or say something wise. She just nodded and sipped her drink. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I used to sit in the shower, fully dressed, just to feel something, just to be somewhere that felt safe. Not because I was depressed, exactly, but because I didn't know who I was anymore." I looked at her, but she didn't look back. Her eyes were on the table. "I lost a baby," she continued. 3 years ago. A girl. We named her Lily." I swallowed hard. My throat went dry. She'd never said that before. My husband, he couldn't handle it. Or maybe he just didn't want to. He left 6 months later. Moved in with someone else. Said he couldn't live in a house that felt like a grave. She finally looked up at me. "I came here to get away from everything that reminded me of her. Of him. Of that version of me." I didn't know what to say, but I knew what I felt. That strange, heavy quiet between 2 people who had nothing left to pretend about. "I don't want pity," she said. "And I'm not broken. I understand what it means to carry something you can't set down." I nodded. "Me too." We didn't talk much more that night. We finished our drinks, and I walked her home. No hug, no touch, just a pause at her front door and a quiet goodnight. From that evening on, things shifted. We started taking walks together after dinner. Nothing long, just around the block. Sometimes with the kids, sometimes just us. She'd ask how work was going, and I'd ask how the new books she was reading were. Light things, but they meant more than they sounded. On weekends, she'd sit on the bleachers at Ava's soccer games. Caleb once whispered to me, "She cheers louder than you, Dad." She started leaving a porch light on when I worked late. And I started leaving leftovers at her door with notes like "too much chili again" or "I swear this stew is edible." We still didn't talk about what this was. We didn't need to. One night, after a particularly long day at work, I came home and found a folded blanket and a note on my porch. "For when the couch feels too cold. E." I don't know what it was about that little gesture, but it hit me hard. I sat down right there on the steps, holding that blanket, and I cried for the first time in months. Not the choking, angry kind of cry. A quiet, exhausted release. Like my soul had finally exhaled. That weekend, I invited her and her cat over for movie night with the kids. We made popcorn, watched a Pixar film. The 4 of us ended up on the same couch, under the same blanket she'd left me. Ava leaned against Emily's shoulder. Caleb fell asleep with his legs across both of us. I just sat there still, present, not thinking about the past, not worrying about what came next. That night, after the kids went to bed, I walked her home again. As we stood at her door, I said, "I don't know what I'd do if you hadn't moved in next door." She smiled and said, "You don't have to know. I'm here." We didn't kiss. We didn't make promises. We just stood there, 2 people who had nothing to offer but their presence. And somehow, that was more than enough. I went to bed that night, not feeling fixed, but feeling held. Understood. Sometimes that's more important than love. Sometimes it's the thing that makes love possible again. By the time Emily had been living next door for almost 3 years, I'd stopped thinking of her as my neighbor. I didn't call her my girlfriend either. We weren't that, at least not in the way people usually mean it. We were something else, something that didn't need to be named. There were routines now, comfortable ones. She'd knock on my back door every Saturday morning with banana muffins, and I'd hand her a mug of black coffee without asking how she liked it. I already knew. She liked it strong and hot, no sugar. Same as me. The kids had grown attached to her. Caleb would bring her school drawings, and Ava would braid her hair while they watched TV on her couch. She was in our lives like she'd always been there, like she'd always belonged. But we hadn't crossed any clear lines. One evening, I was fixing the screen door on her back porch. It had been squeaking for weeks, and I finally had time after work. She came out with 2 beers and sat on the step beside me. I was thinking about painting the kitchen, she said. Oh yeah, something warmer. The white feels too sterile, too much like the old house. I nodded, tightening the hinge. You want help? I wouldn't say no. She paused, then looked at me. Jacob, do people ask you if you've moved on? I didn't answer right away. I knew what she meant. Not just about Lauren. About her baby, her past, her ex-husband. About the people who think that time is enough to erase pain. Sometimes, I said. Mostly they just stop asking. She sipped her beer. I hate that question. As if grief is a train stop and you're supposed to hop off and go sightseeing. I chuckled. If it is, I think we missed our stop. She laughed. Not a sad laugh, a real one. And something in her shoulders loosened. That tension she always carried in her neck and jaw. I saw it soften. That night, she stayed late. The kids were already asleep, and we sat in the living room listening to an old Bob Dylan record Lauren used to love. Emily didn't say anything about it. She just sat with me, humming along like it was familiar. At one point, without thinking, I put my hand over hers. I expected her to pull away, maybe shift, maybe make a joke to lighten the moment. But she didn't. She just turned her hand and laced her fingers through mine. We sat like that until the record ended. The next morning, nothing was awkward. She came over with pancakes, and the kids didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. Later that week, we drove out to a trail just outside of town. It was a place Lauren and I used to go, but I hadn't been back since she passed. I don't know why I chose that day. Maybe because I wanted to face something. Maybe because I didn't want to keep that part of my life locked away. Emily walked beside me, not in front, not behind, just beside. We didn't say much, but halfway through the trail, we came to a clearing where Lauren and I used to sit. I stood there for a moment, then turned to Emily and said, "This is where I proposed." She looked at the spot, then at me. "I'm glad you brought me here," she said. And that was it. No comparisons, no discomfort, just presence, understanding. That night, she came over again. No reason, no excuse. Just came in, kicked off her shoes, and sat on the couch like it was her own home. After the kids went to bed, she lingered. I knew she was going to. I walked her to the door, but this time, she didn't leave. She turned, looked at me, and said, "I'm not asking for forever. I'm not asking for a label. I just feel safe here. With you." I stepped closer, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, and said, "Me too." And then we kissed. Soft, careful, like two people who weren't trying to rush anything, but who had finally let the dam break. She stayed the night. Not on my bed. She took the couch. We both knew the kids weren't ready for anything else. Neither were we, if I'm honest. But in the morning, I found her in the kitchen making breakfast, wearing one of my old flannel shirts, humming, and it didn't feel strange. It didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt right. That Sunday, we drove the kids to the lake, the one Lauren always said we'd retire next to. I hadn't been back since she passed. We set up a small picnic. The kids played near the water. Emily sat beside me on the blanket, her hand resting over mine. "I'm not trying to replace her," she said. I looked at her. "You're not. She's still here. In everything. And you're here, too. In a different way. We didn't say I love you. It wasn't time for that. Maybe it never would be. But we found something else. Not love. At least not the kind we used to believe in. Not the lightning bolt. Not the romance movie ending. But something solid. Quiet. Real. A way forward. A way to breathe again. It's been almost 5 years since Lauren passed. Some days it still hits me, like when I hear a certain song at the grocery store, or when Ava laughs in a way that sounds exactly like her mother. But the sharpness has dulled. The grief is still there, but it's woven into the fabric of my life now. I carry it, but no longer carries me. Emily never tried to take that grief away. She just sat beside it. We never made a big declaration about being together. It just evolved, like seasons changing, gradually, naturally, without force. She never moved in, not officially. She still lived in her house next door, but she was with us more often than not, especially on school nights and Sunday mornings. Her toothbrush lived in our bathroom. Her cat made our living room his personal throne. And then one evening, while we were folding laundry, Ava asked her, "Are you going to marry my dad?" Emily looked at me, a little caught off guard, and then said, "No, sweetie. I don't think we need that to be a family." Ava blinked, thought about it, then said, "Okay, but you still have to come to my play next week." Emily smiled. "Wouldn't miss it. That was us. No labels, no rings, just quiet, consistent presence. We both had our ghosts. I'd be lying if I said we didn't. There were times when I'd see her staring out the window, holding the necklace with Lily's name engraved on it. And I still sometimes talked to Lauren in the garage when I was alone. That never changed, but we learned how to hold space for each other, how to exist with the past while still choosing the present. About 6 months ago, Emily started keeping a small garden in my backyard. Just a few raised beds, tomatoes, herbs, some flowers. I built her a little bench under the tree. Some weekends, we'd sit there and just watch the kids play. It felt like the kind of life we both thought we'd lost for good. One rainy evening, she brought over a stack of photo albums from her old house. She said she hadn't opened them in years. We sat on the floor and went through them one by one. Pictures of her as a teacher, her parents, her ex, and then a sonogram. Lily. She looked at me and said, "I thought I could erase her by starting over. But I've realized she's part of me, and anyone who loves me has to love that part too." I reached over and closed the album gently. "I do," I said. "I already do." And I meant it. We were both scarred, but we weren't broken anymore. One night, maybe 2 months ago, we had a storm that knocked out the power. The kids were scared, so we all slept in the living room. Flashlights, board games, and eventually all 4 of us curled up on blankets. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up and looked around. The kids were asleep between us. Emily's hand was on my arm. The storm had passed, and I remember thinking, this is home. This is what it looks like now. Not what I planned. Not what I thought it would be. But good. Solid. Real. Last week, Emily put her house up for sale. Not because we needed to, but because she said, "It's time. I want to be where I already live." She's moving in officially next month. No ceremony. No announcement. Just a few boxes, her books, her cat, and her toothbrush that never really left. We talked about what that means. Not marriage, not in the traditional sense. Just building a life together. Being there for the ordinary moments, grocery runs, report cards, flu seasons, Saturday pancakes. She told me she doesn't need a new chapter, just space in the one I'm already writing. So here we are. Emily's in the kitchen right now, helping Ava with a school project. Caleb's drawing something on the floor with crayons, and I'm sitting on the porch, watching the sun go down. Sometimes I still miss Lauren in ways I can't explain, but I've stopped feeling guilty about being happy again. Because happiness doesn't mean forgetting. It means healing. And with Emily, I healed. Not all at once. Not completely. But enough. Enough to live. Enough to love, even if it looks different now. So if you're wondering how the story ends, it doesn't end with a wedding. It doesn't end with a dramatic twist or some movie moment revelation. It ends like this. With peace. With presence. With 2 people who chose to keep going and who somehow found each other in the quiet aftermath of everything they thought they lost. And that is more than enough.